Hello people of YouTube, my name is Brad, this is my channel Anime Orange, and this week in 3D metal model news. The big news this week is only going to be interesting to those of you who are Star Wars fans. I say that because I know a lot of people are a little tired of the Star Wars stuff. I unfortunately am not, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, not one of those that are tired of it. Rather excited about the fact that the ICONX ICX 130 Imperial Star Destroyer is finally here. It has been released. It's been out for a couple of days now. It is for sale on Toys. Probably can be found in a multitude of other places as well, at least online. But it's very exciting. There's been talk about this thing for months now, and it is finally out. I've taken a peek at the instructions online. It looks like online it does say that there are 2.5 sheets, and from what I see on the instructions, because the instructions are posted up, it looks like 2 full-size ICONX style sheets of metal and 1 sort of Metal Earth size style sheet to put this thing together. It also looks like it doesn't attach to the base, it just sits on it. So if that's done well, which I think it has, that'll be really awesome, especially if you wanted to pose it, or if you wanted to make it without its stand, or if you want to do something really creative and hang it from the ceiling. Done stuff like that with models in the past. Don't know if I'm going to do it with this, but a lot of exciting things. There's 16 pages of instructions, which is right in line with the Western Star 4900 logging truck and trailer. It's a long name. I've just about got it right now. So it's going to be a long build, although it should have some really large pieces that might cut into it. But it looks like it's got a lot of detail. I could go on and on about it. As you can tell, I'm very excited. The ICONX Imperial Star Destroyer is finally here. We are still waiting on the ICONX R2-D2 and the ICONX X-Wing, as well as the ME speeder bike, or Metal Earth speeder bike, but in time I'm sure they will come. And also I would like to point out we are getting closer and closer to the release of the latest Star Wars movie, episode 9. I believe that's right, episode 9. So there's probably some more models coming soon. No details and information about that as of yet, but I'm sure it's coming. One other small detail that I noticed this morning, I kind of heard about it yesterday, and I just waited until this video to put it out there. The Ford vehicles that have recently been talked about and posted is coming soon. There was a little bit of an update, painting, lettering, styling update to the MMS 197 31 Ford Model A truck. Previously, when I first talked about it and when they first put it up on the Fascinations Model Earth page, coming soon page, it said Sam's General Store on the side, which is really neat. I think it's really neat they took the truck and put some sort of name painted on the side. That's very much in line with something of that age. However, for reasons that I know nothing about, that has changed. It is now says White Swan Farm Supply Swan, I believe that's Washington, WA, on the side. Minor change, a little bit of an update. These things sometimes happen in the time period between things being announced as coming soon and when they finally out. I've noticed this sort of change happening numerous times. Wild West models kind of changed their painting style a little bit before they were finally released. I remember, speaking of Star Wars, when the Solo movie models were being released, the AT hauler changed positions from when it was originally announced to when it was finally released. So these things sometimes happen. Beyond that, there is really nothing new to be found out there as far as models is concerned. All the usual sites, AliExpress, Peace Cool, anywhere else that I've looked, everything is the same as it has been for a little while now. So nothing else new to talk about. So that leads us to this week's question of the week. And I'd asked a couple of weeks ago, just start leaving some questions in the comments down below, and I will get to them in future videos. For this week, I have chosen the question from Chris Pasquich, and very simply he asked, what tools, if any, have you bought for metal models that you ended up not really using? And that's an interesting question. I am kind of glad you asked that question. There is one tool that I picked up that I've never actually used. I picked up some time back ring nose pliers, and ring nose pliers have 2 rounded ends like you see here. This has only got 1, and they're useful for rounding really tiny parts. I remember using them. It was around the time that I was building one of the Batwing models. I bought them, and I used it to shape that really thin part that goes around the edge between the top and bottom halves on the Batwing model, one of the 2. and it was a very handy tool for that. I've used it on things like, I believe, one of the Dragon builds that I did, shaping some parts. They've come in very handy. But when I bought those tools, I also bought this, and I'm not exactly sure what it is called, but it has kind of a round nose on one side, and the other side is just flat pliers. And I've never actually used them. They've just never been handy. I thought they would be, and there are probably situations where I could use them, but the round nose pliers fill in for everything that this might be used for, and that larger end just gets in the way. So I don't even think I've ever really talked about them. Picked them up. I never actually used them because I've gotten to where I don't immediately announce when I'm trying something new. I like to put it to a test before I suggest it, or put it in a video where, you know, this is something you should get. And I've been doing that with the 3D printed tools that I've come out with. There are some things that I really hardly anybody knows about because I've 3D printed things and gave it a shot and it didn't work, or it needed fine tuning, and I'd rather use it in a few models and see if it's actually worth it before I start promoting it. I guess that's one way you put it, before I start promoting it or talking about it. But speaking of 3D printed tools, that has caused some of the things that I have bought to become a bit obsolete. And one of the things that I'm talking about is this set right here. You hardly ever see me use it. This is some sort of odd fondant set. Fondant shaping set that I got off of AliExpress. It popped up one day. I thought it was really neat, and I liked it because you have these spear shapes on the end of a stick. And at that time, whenever it come to spherical shaped, dome shaped models or pieces and models, the only way that I knew to do anything about that was to use like a bead and try to hold the bead in one hand and shape the part around it. And you're dealing with tiny parts, and a bead that can easily slip out of your hands. That's often what happened. The bead shot off to one side, sometimes taking the part with it, and it made a mess. So seeing spherical shapes on a stick, so I can hold the stick and then push and wrap the part around it, worked a lot better. However, since buying these tools, I started 3D printing stuff because these weren't always easy to find, and people would ask, where'd you get them from? And I couldn't even find them again. I created a dome shaping set that basically was a similar thing. It had round shapes on little sticks around a center tool. One tool, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, one tool, several different shapes, small and more compact and easy to put in a drawer or off to the side. And now that I have that, I never use these anymore. So these have kind of become obsolete. Another tool that I used to use quite frequently when I first started building these models, and I have several of these laying around the house, and that is locking clamps or forceps. They have long, thin edges. I have this set which is really long, but I also have a set that's about half the length that I didn't use much. This would frequently be used to hold parts or reach into deep areas to twist things, and it also has the advantage of these locking teeth, so it doesn't open up. So I could lock it on a part and then focus on guiding that part and not have to worry about focusing on keeping a grip while I guide it. However, the downside to these is the teeth. And I thought at one point about trying to grind that down flat, because once you get to the point of locking, you're putting pressure, and that would oftentimes score or damage a part. It was oftentimes a necessary evil, but I picked up some precision tweezers that I use all the time now, and for the most part they've replaced this. I rarely ever need to tool this tool out, and it probably hasn't been pulled out and used in months, if not a year now. So yeah, there are occasionally tools that there's the one tool that I picked up that I never used, but there are tools that have become obsolete as time goes on, and these are some very good examples. You might still see me pull this out, but I usually try to avoid it because of the damage it could do. Usually most of the time I can use a precision tweezers or long nose pliers to reach in if it's an area that I have an issue reaching into and solve any problem. So thank you, Chris. That was a very good question. I love questions like that because it gives me a chance to expand upon other things. It's something that I've never really had much of a forum to talk about before. It gives me a reason to talk about it. So excellent question. Next week there was a few other questions that other people have asked. Next week I will pick one of those and talk about that. But of course, if you have another question you would like to add, feel free to leave it in the comments down below on this video, and I will try to answer it in the future. I do want to take a quick moment to add that this summer has been insane. There has been a lot going on in my personal life. The moving has had long-lasting effects. Unless you've kind of been through it yourself, which I know a lot of people have, it's hard to explain. But just the process of moving, how many things it upsets and how long it takes to get back to normal, and couple that with there's been a lot of things going on in my personal life. The girlfriend has taken a job where she travels a lot, which on one hand gives me more free time when she's not here, but when she is here, I want to spend all that time with her. That's what happened earlier this week. She had some time at home, and I just put everything else down I was working on and just did almost nothing for 2 days, which was badly needed. That slowed things down. It delayed the release of the part 3 of my recent build of the logging truck. I don't know what happened with part 2. It was supposed to go live. It never did. That's something I'm going to have to pay more attention to, because that's happened numerous times over the past few months where I usually schedule these videos and they don't always go live. Or at least they haven't. There's been a few instances lately where that didn't happen. There's been some medical issues I haven't talked about as far as medical personal updates in a while. I'm still waiting on the kidney transplant list. For the most part, I'm still doing very well. Still in kidney failure, but managing it very well. But there is still the issue of managing it, which includes nightly dialysis, includes regular doctor's appointments, and there's been some extra appointments with the kidney transplant team just to kind of brush up on some things. It's not something I absolutely had to do because I've been through the transplant process, but it's something that I chose to do to be more informed, to include part of my personal care team. So when you have a transplant, they prefer that you have at least one, preferably more than one person at home to help care for you after that transplant, because there's a lot to take in. And one of the members of my chosen family personal team, I wanted to bring them with to get some first-hand knowledge, and that, this just takes time out of my day, but it was something that needed to happen. I've also had a possible infection. I say possible because there were signs, but there were a lot of missing signs. There was a lot of I didn't have a lot of symptoms, but I did have some signs of a possible infection. Samples were taken. Took forever to get results back. The results didn't make sense, and we think there was contamination, so I spent some time this morning giving new samples. But everything seems to have cleared up, and it's just, everything's exploding. School started back. The youngest first year in high school, that has just kind of imploded and been a disaster. And yeah, there's a lot going on, but I'm really hoping things will calm down after this point and I can really get back to building these models, because I have a line of things, the requests that I really need to get to. And yeah, I'm trying to keep this short without making a long video, but I just kind of want to give a very brief update of what's been going on, and I'm still working at it. I've already got some work started on the tram, on the Melbourne tram. That was a request. I've got a few other things lined up, and I'm pretty sure there's some new models heading my way from Fascinations for me to review, so I need to get back to work. Thank you for watching. Thank you to my Patreon supporters for continuing to support this channel. As always, keep on keeping on.